After leaving the corporate 9 to 5 grind, I became the boss of my own spiritual business, helping others explore and navigate the human experience from insight, wisdom, and lessons learned along the way. Today, I help aspiring spiritual entrepreneurs gain the confidence to share their gifts with the world. Welcome to the Happy Healing Shop podcast. I'm your host, Trang Pham Nguyen, and each week we'll dive into incredible stories of strength, resilience, and transformation. So, if you are ready for some serious breakthroughs, laughs and tears, and stories that will inspire you, you are in the right place, my friend. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to the show. I've got something really special for you today. And if you've been following along, you know I recently took a trip to South America. And let me say, it was not just a vacation, it was eye opening. Like, oh, I am seeing how I need to rewire how I live my life kind of travel. So today I'm bringing you part one of the 22 life lessons I picked up on this journey. These aren't your typical pack light or don't drink the water travel tips. They are more deep, personal, and if I'm being honest, a little raw. They came to me at the most random moments, sitting in a cafe with a cup of coffee, going for long walks as I explored a town, or even lying in bed at night reflecting what I was experiencing. Some are spiritual, some are practical, some you might feel like you already know, but every single one taught me how to live more freely and intentionally. And I think you'll resonate with more than a few of them. So let's dive into what I learned from my trip that changed my perspective on things. Number one, I got a taste of financial freedom and I liked it very, very much. So let's just start here because this was huge for me. For the first time in a very long time, I felt what it was like to not think twice about money. I wasn't looking at the prices at the grocery store. I wasn't calculating tips or budgeting every single meal. And I looked at the menu and asked myself instead, what do I want to eat? Not what can I afford today or how much does this cost? Now, let me be clear. I wasn't throwing away money around or staying in luxury hotels. The cost of living here was just more affordable. But that feeling of freedom, of abundance, that was everything. It gave me clarity on what I want to build in my life, in my business, not just wealth, but financial freedom and that feeling of peace where money is not the loudest voice in the room. Number two, letting go of driving allowed me to breathe again. If you live in a major city like I do, you know that driving is like a low level survival game. Gas, pumping the brakes, stress, people cutting you off. It takes a lot of mental space. But in South America, I Ubered because it was so affordable for me. Maybe sometimes I took public transport. Sometimes I hopped on a motorcycle taxi. And let me tell you, not having to drive freed up so much brain space and not made me feel as drained. I didn't realize how much of my mental bandwidth was going to think about how do I get there safely. It was like outsourcing the stress so I could sit back, be in the moment, and just be. Even though I can't get rid of driving quite in my life, but at least I am more aware of how much of a difference it makes on me and where it's coming from. Number three, the trip showed me what I actually want long term. This wasn't a fun getaway. It was like holding up a mirror to my future life. And I realized I want to build a life where I don't have to stress about bills. Everyone can relate to that, where I can hire help, support other people's businesses, and circulate wealth. And not just for me, it's also helping other people, my clients, my friends, my community, and reach a place of financial ease. This trip just solidified that it's not just about having money, but rather how we get to live because of it. Number four, manifestation became real, not just a buzzword. Here's the thing, manifesting isn't about saying, I want this and waiting for it to fall into your lap and wishing that it would. It's about feeling, knowing, and believing without a doubt what it is you're asking for. And that's kind of hard to do out of thin air, right? So this trip gave me a real life, tangible experience on how I want to feel safe, free, lit up, aligned, fulfilled. So when I visualize the future I want, I don't have to struggle to imagine it. I can remember because I've lived it. Number five, the universe was talking to me, and this time I listened. Oh my goodness, the many synchronicities that happened. Not gonna lie, I kind of tried it out for fun. I'd wish for something small, like a quiet room, a perk to any flight experience I can get, a good massage, and it showed up. Like the time I booked a four-bed dorm in Peru because it was much more pricey there and no one else showed up. Or when I was exhausted from a day trip to Machu Picchu and asked the universe to send me a good massage place, and this woman approached me out of nowhere on the streets, and her massage was so good that I went back the next day. Or I was looking for a shoe store that sold a variety of sneakers, such as Nike or Skechers, but at an affordable price, which was not easy or common to find. And 3 days later, after mentioning it to the universe, I came across a random shoe store that had the shoes I was looking for. Or when I was bumped up on premium economy on my flight and sat 3 rows behind the pilot without even asking. These little fun, tiny requests to the universe were easy to manifest because I would ask and gave no pressure or no deadline for it. In fact, I forgot about my request and allowed it to play out or unfold. And here's what my intuitive coach told me: watch what happens in 6 months. Because when you are vibrating at such a high frequency, when you're traveling, you're at ease, you're at peace and joy and contentment and gratitude, the universe responds. So, next time you're traveling, maybe not on a stressful trip with people that might make it difficult for you, but one that makes you feel at ease, pay attention to the manifestations that happen months later when you come back. Number six, the less I planned, the more at peace I felt. Now, I am not someone that usually flies by the seats of my pants or try wing it. I love a good calendar, my to do list, my well thought out plan. But on this trip, I only planned things 24 to 48 hours in advance. I gave myself permission actually to change my mind and sometimes even last minute. And it definitely helped that I felt comfortable doing that because I was traveling alone. So here's an example. There were nights when I go to bed thinking, tomorrow I am definitely exploring this one spot or this one restaurant. But when I woke up the next day, that plan didn't feel, I don't say right, but I just didn't feel, I wasn't feeling it anymore. And so the old Trang, the back home in the States Trang, would have pushed through and stuck to the plan. But on this trip, I gave myself the grace to say, nope, not feeling it anymore. And you know what? That freedom to change my mind, not once, but sometimes 10 times in a single day, was so liberating. And so when you're not locked into a rigid schedule, you start listening more closely to what your body, your energy, your soul, and your higher self actually want to do. And to branch off of that, I want to talk about the pressure we put on ourselves. So, one moment that really stuck with me was when I found myself rushing to meet up with a girl I had promised to hang out with. And I caught myself hurrying, stressing, and feeling all this unnecessary pressure. And then it hit me: why am I rushing? Why am I putting this pressure on myself to keep a promise that in reality didn't need to be set in stone? And this was similar to how I was feeling in the States a lot. It reminded me of something a peer mentor once told me: sometimes you have to learn to dial it down. Dial down the rushing, dial down the overfunctioning, dial down that intense type A energy that has you going above and beyond every single time. And it's about doing what you do best, but with a softer structure, a lighter approach, and with a lot less pressure on yourself. And because of that, this trip taught me what being truly present feels like. So when I was in South America, I was not thinking about next week or even 2 days from now, maybe sometimes, but I wasn't juggling any lists, to dos, or deadlines. The furthest I looked ahead, honestly, was tomorrow, the next day. And let me tell you that presence, it felt so good. So now here's the $1 million question: how do I bring that same sense of ease and presence back to my everyday life when I come home? And it starts with small shifts, easing myself in, giving myself permission to not plan every single detail, allowing myself to say no. That's really hard because I appreciate when people are not flaky and I don't want to be that flaky person. So I actually now understand when people say, oh, for that invite you're sending me to, I'm a maybe. Whereas before, it would frustrate me, but I get it now. So that leads me to having a new template for what balance looks like and feels like. I now have a template for how I want to show up, not just when I'm traveling, but in my everyday life. So I'm calling it the travel version of trying. And it's the version that doesn't overschedule or overpromise. It's the version that's okay with changing her mind and putting off the non essentials. It's definitely not easy. And I know I'll slip back into old ways, old habits now and then, and I already have. But having this template means I can check in with myself and ask, this feels a little bit off. Am I calibrated to the travel version of me? Or do I need to make some adjustments? So, how can you give yourself permission to plan less, to listen more, and to dial it down in your own life? Less planning doesn't mean less progress. Sometimes it also means finding the peace you didn't know you were craving. Number seven, I was carrying the weight of being the responsible one. So, you know how you might get labeled as dependable or the one that always follows through? That's great until it becomes a cage. And I realized I was putting pressure on myself, even on vacation, to quote unquote keep my word, to be the reliable one, to show up when I didn't actually have the capacity or when I didn't even want to be frank. But what if being responsible doesn't mean saying yes to everything and everyone? What if it means being responsible for your own well being first? And that mindset shift was a game changer. So let's start with a little story from my travels. I met this guy from Ohio, and I don't meet a lot of Americans when I travel, right? So let's call him Dave. So Dave said something that really hit me and made me feel a little bit confused, but he said, "No one back home actually relies on me." And honestly, I was stunned. I thought, wow, that is not even close to my reality. Because for me, being responsible or having a responsible reputation has always been a big part of my life. When I had my early retail and hospitality jobs when I was younger, I was always the one who got scheduled for the busiest nights and weekend shifts. Meanwhile, my colleagues cruised through the slower shifts that they got, earned the same paycheck, but didn't have to deal with as many customers as I did. Does that sound familiar? Because that is the downside of being the quote unquote reliable one. So it took me years and a lot of reflection to realize just because you can do something doesn't mean it's your responsibility. So that brings me to defining what's truly yours. So when I was traveling, I had the time and space to evaluate this. What are things that are genuinely my responsibility, and what are things that creep up in disguised or obligations? So, for example, if you have your kids and they need to go to school on Friday, that is a non negotiable. It's on your calendar, it's important. But what about the tiny favors you used to say yes to? So, the ones that seem harmless but pile up over time. And that's what I call scope creep or responsibility creep. And scope creep doesn't just happen at work, it sneaks into your personal life. And here's the kicker: those little things can start to weigh you down, breed resentment, and then leave you drained. This is the hard part: coming back from that realization and actually making changes, returning back home. People are used to you being a certain way. And when you start drawing more soft boundaries, it's a shift for them too, but it's worth it. Depending on the people that you surround yourself with, you might get a little pushback as well. Which leads me to living with intention. One thing I've learned to ask myself is what kind of experience I want to have today. And that simple question can be a game changer because, for example, instead of feeling obligated to have coffee or dinner with someone, check in with yourself. Do I really want this? Or am I doing it out of routine or habit? And here is where it gets really good. My mentor taught me this little morning practice where you wake up, say out loud or write it down, I want to feel XYZ. So whatever the XYZ feeling is, like I want to feel productive today, joyful, restful, adventurous, you name it. And then let that intention guide your day. Maybe you might get a little nudge to head to the park instead of meeting up for a coffee. It might not make sense. It might be saying no to that weekly hangout that you've outgrown. Whatever it looks like, let your intention and inspiration lead the way. So, what are one and two areas of your life where you can reevaluate what is truly your responsibility? Number eight, I learned I can let go completely from family, friends, people, and expectations. There is a power in letting go and choosing yourself. I've spent such a long time, probably years, just randomly over time, thinking, oh, but it's so hard to walk away from family's expectations, group texts, the regular social invites. It's awkward. You know the drill. But here's the truth: the longer I was away from home, the more I realized how okay I was and also how okay everyone was. And it hit me that if I can detach for a few months, I can do it for life when needed. You don't have to respond right away. You don't have to show up out of obligation. And the big one, you probably don't have to explain yourself to the amount that you do. And that is freedom. Letting go of family expectations, friendships that don't align anymore, or even just the idea of what you should be doing. It is not easy at all. But when you get there, oh my gosh, it is very freeing. And here's the thing, sometimes it takes stepping away for a much longer period of time to really be able to understand this and experience this. For me, it wasn't just a few days or even a few weeks, it was this longer trip, 3 months, time away from everything that made me realize, hey, I actually can live this way. So it's choosing myself again and again. And that's okay. So, my question for you is, where are you putting other people's needs ahead of your own, especially when it comes to decision making? Sometimes we forget how much power we give away to other people. And it's not always about the big, huge, life changing decisions. Sometimes it's in the tiny choices that add up over time. So here's an example. One Christmas, actually, I think the most recent one, I made the decision to skip out on family dinner for Christmas. Now, I know that sounds small, but obviously for a lot of people, Christmas is a huge deal, especially will you get backlash for people for not joining with a family. I realized the power wasn't in skipping the dinner itself, it was in the choice that I made. And as you continue to make these little choices for yourself, you'll start to see things shift. Like you'll start to see the energy shift for sure. And so often we feel powerless, like the decisions are being made for us or we're trapped by obligation. But the truth is, you have the power to choose always. You can decide what you're willing to accept in your job, your relationships, your friendships. So, my question here is, if none of it mattered, if no one cared, or if people did not even exist, what would you truly actually want to choose in your life right now? And that question is your compass. That's where your power lies. So, I hope that sparks something inside of you because you deserve to live a life that feels like your own. Number nine, I'll never be the same. And that's a good thing. Coming home felt like a reverse culture shock, or maybe more like reverse life shock. Kind of like when the world opened back up after the pandemic lockdown. You try go back to what was before the normal and you think, "Oh my gosh, how did I ever live like this?" And that's how I felt coming back, seeing traffic again or having to drive through it, the hustle culture, the constant notifications. It was loud, it was heavy, and it started making me reevaluate everything. So even with relationships, being with this person, what has that taught you about yourself? Of what you want and what you don't want anymore. If something like this happens again and someone starts acting this way, what are you going to do? And just because it was your before doesn't mean it deserves to be your after. So if you're feeling that reverse life shock right now, whether it's coming home, reevaluating a job, or even a relationship, even though there was history, remember that you are not going back to normal. You're creating a new normal that serves you better. And that is a very, very good thing. Lesson number 10, social media is a vibe match and not always a good one. This one's tricky, but when I came home, I opened up social media a lot more and it just hit differently. Not in a good way. It felt noisy, it felt shallow. And here's the thing I realized why. After a full day of work, where you're maybe already a little mentally drained, scrolling through social media often matches that same drained vibe. You don't even notice it because it's like energy meeting the same energy, like drained to drained, right? But when I was traveling, it was like night and day. I was mentally alive, stimulated. So when I hopped on social media, I felt the energy shift immediately and more drastically. It was glaring. And that's when I had this aha moment where social media can often amplify the worst parts of people. And if you are not careful, you can easily absorb it. So I was scrolling out of habit and not joy. And so now I am much more intentional about when, why, and how I use social media. And I also, to prevent scrolling from happening, I actually have an app that will shut down my social media, shut down my access to any of my social media for a certain amount of hours. Lesson number 11, I was never lonely, just occasionally bored. A lot of people ask me when I travel solo, weren't you lonely traveling alone? And honestly, nope. I was dating myself. I took myself out to eat. I wandered new cities, people watched. It was romantic in the purest sense. Not romance with another person, but rather with life. And looking back, I can see there's beauty of being so content with yourself and who you are. Sure, I was bored at times. But those quiet spaces are where ideas, my insights, and inspiration also came to me. You don't get that when your schedule is packed or when your phone is always buzzing. So, there you have it. Part one, where I share the first 11 out of 22 lessons I learned from my travels, my reflections from my recent trip to South America. Make sure to hit that follow button so you don't miss out on part two, where I share even more powerful insights and takeaways from my journey. And I'm super curious about what insight or aha moments from today's episode really resonate with you. I absolutely love hearing people's perspectives and hearing your thoughts. So feel free to drop me a message or share your reflections here down below or on social media. And if you can leave me a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, I'd be so grateful. Those reviews help other people discover the show and join in on the magic. And remember, the fun does not stop here. It continues over at thehappyhealingshop.com, where you'll find plenty of free resources, blog posts, guides, video series, and more to support you on your spiritual journey. Until we meet again, always remember to shine your light brightly and to share your story, because you never know who it might help, inspire, or give hope to in their own journey. Thank you so much for being here with me today, and I'll see you next time.